Welcome everyone to Chapter 11, Using Work Samples to Look at Creativity. It is important to look at children's creative development because observing children's creative effort can indicate the following. One, long attention span. When we have children who find an interest not only in art, but in any aspect of development or any aspect of curriculum, and they sit there for longer than their age group is expected to sit, they are demonstrating that they have the ability for long attention span. For most of us who have worked in the field for a while, we know that our preschoolers and even infants and toddlers don't have much of an attention span. But if you notice, and if you have had the opportunity to watch children when they are creating, whether it's using blocks, clay, raw materials, painting, drawing, whatever it may be, if they're really interested, their attention span is super long. And even for those kids who don't necessarily enjoy working, when it comes down to art, it's such a big opportunity for them to explore that most children really truly enjoy working in the art area or working with art materials. Um, Observing their creativity or the development of creative effort can really also give us an insight about of their capacity for organization. How do they hold the paper? Where do they begin to draw? Where do they begin to color? Where do they begin to paint? Knowing, planning, analyzing is how their art is going to look. Not only is it helping them develop that creative aspect of development, but it's also helping them develop cognitive ability and approaches to learning. How do I approach this? What should go first? How should I create this? What color should I use to make my end product? When children are using or working in the art center, it's such a big opportunity for us to engage them in communication, open-ended questions, and really get them critically thinking, right? Oh, we only have white and red, but you want pink. I wonder what we can do. Do you think we can mix these two colors, red and white? What color do you think that will make us? So there's in all during the whole day, there's lots of opportunities for us to engage them and a lot of open-ended questioning that will lead to extended communication and practice of language. But art area or the art centers really afford many more opportunities, in my opinion. It also allows us to see if the children are able to see things in a different perspective. It also allows us to view what they see, right? So, most of us have heard that there's kids who, when they're angry, they use specific color. When they're sad, they use specific color. Now, we're not specialists. We are not therapists, but many of us have heard about things like this or have read about it or have learned about it in classes, that it's very interesting and it can lead us to see how the child's perspective. Also, allowing the children to engage in creative play, not only through art, but just creative play, period. It lets them explore before formal instruction. Now, one of the things that I'm always a big pusher for, and one thing that I always argue, is that when children start formal preschool, at an age of 3, most of them are just not ready. They do not have the attention span, that they do not have the fine motor control, they do not have self regulation, enough to where they can sit there and for more than 5 minutes at a time and just listen to formal instruction or participate in formal instruction. So the child needs to be ready. And I have found that allowing them to explore in creative play and create, which includes art, right? It sets them, it gets them ready to sit down, and it gets them ready to actually learn to listen to instructions and rules, and it's just a great opportunity for them to immerse themselves into the actual academic setting. If you have a child who has never been in a preschool and then you throw them in a preschool and you don't allow them to explore, they're going to be afraid, they're going to be tense, they might be stressed, they might react, who knows, depending on their temperament, how they're going to react. And it's just usually not the best thing to do. I always spend at least the first 2 weeks of our first of every school year just allowing the children to explore, get to know the environment, get to know one another, and of course get to know me. Exploration is really, really important before formal instruction. Allowing children to create when they want to be alone or alone is such an amazing thing. When you allow children to sit there and just work on their art without instructions, without people interrupting them, just alone, you will see how amazing the products will be. They enjoy working by themselves, and again, their attention span grows when it comes to art. It's also a great opportunity for us to, or for the children to take a closer look at things, and for us to take a closer look at things. Creativity, of course, if we afford them or if we allow them to work in these areas, we are allowing them to see things differently. We are allowing them to look at things in different ways to provide possible solutions. Creativity is taking a bit of knowledge and changing it cognitively and practically transforming it into something else. So we need to give them that opportunity. Have you noticed that a lot of kids speak to themselves when they're creating, or they sing to themselves? Again, we are allowing them to organize, to focus, to plan, to look at things in different ways, which is all part of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex allows us to plan, analyze, reason. And if we give our children this time, then we are doing them a great favor, right? Because we're helping them develop or further develop their prefrontal cortex, which is considered the executive part of the brain. Again, what I mentioned earlier, creativity and cognitive development hand in hand. I'm going to read this again because I really like it. I think it expresses everything. Creativity is taking a bit of knowledge and changing it cognitively and practically, transforming it into something else. If we tell children what to do, we're not allowing them to think for themselves. We are not allowing them to plan or analyze for themselves. We're telling them what to do. So when we just tell them go for it, guess what? We're making them think for themselves. We're making them analyze. We're making them plan. We're making them organize, which is all helping them develop in all aspects of development. Creative ability grows with time. And I think all of us have experienced that in one way or another. The more we practice, the more we engage in anything, it'll grow and it will develop. We will eventually figure out what we like, what we don't like, what we prefer. Same thing with children and art. Previous experience, if you have children who come into your classroom who have never been afforded or given the opportunity to play with clay or Play-Doh or daughters or just paint, period, any art materials, you'll see most of them, it's almost like a shock. What do you mean I can play with this? Oh my gosh. And you'll see some kids that don't want to get dirty. They're like, oh no, my mom's gonna get mad, or oh no, I just don't want to touch things, right? And then you see those kids that they just want to dive into it and start painting and drawing and whatever it is that they're doing in that area. But depending on the experience that they had before, that's going to depend on what their reaction will depend on that experience. So if you have them in your classroom and you give them the opportunities to engage in this creative play, not just art, but play, period, you're going to see that their development and their outlook on mostly everything as they develop and further move on in their education career it's going to be very different. They're going to be more open to try new things. They're going to be more experienced in a lot of things, and of course, they're going to have more of their skills will be more further developed, like fine motor skills and gross motor skills. Um, so many benefits of creativity. Again, it takes looking at things in different ways to provide possible solutions. If we didn't have creative thinkers, imagine what our world would be today. It's the imagination, it's that thinking, it's that creativity that people have that allows us to, or that allows them to invent and create new things and things that have further our world. Now, when it comes to creativity, it's not just art, it's also the way we speak. It's the way we dance, the way we create with blocks or anything else, that we have available to us. And of course, creative the way you think. Now, a lot of teachers or a lot of us will say, well, I'm not creative. Oh, believe me, we're all very creative. If you have $5 and you want to buy something that is $6, what are you going to do? You're going to figure it out, right? You're going to go and find a coupon. You're going to find a store that has the same product for cheaper, whatever. It's all critical thinking. Critical thinking is creativity, and it all stems from what experiences were afforded or given to us as children. I'm sure most of you guys have heard of Reggio Emilia. If I had the opportunity and the money to have or create a Reggio Emilia based center or preschool here in Riverside or in California, I would love it. These kids are all about creating. You walk into these schools in Italy that are based on Reggio Emilia philosophy. You have musical instruments, you have dance classes, you have pottery, you have art, watercolor, oil. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And the staff observes. That's their main job, to observe and facilitate learning through art. So whatever the children wants to do, that's what's going to happen, that's what's going to be done, and the staff is just there to observe and to facilitate that learning. Isn't that cool? I would love to have something like that. And the project of approach, very closely related to Reggio Emilia. The project approach, children come to school, decide what they want to learn, and the staff facilitates that learning. While they say, for example, a child comes in and says, I want to learn about trees. Well, the staff is going to web that. It's like, okay, well, you want to learn about trees? Let's see. What do you want to do? Let's go out for a walk. Let's look at different trees. Let's look at different leaves. Let's look at how trees are planted and what the different types of trees that are out there, what kind of trees you have in your home, what colors are they? Do you want to paint one? Do you want to build one? So they take the interest of the child and they grow it through a web, and the teacher is just there to facilitate the children's learning. Also, having creative development or providing creative development opportunities in a center, it's very important. You want to make sure that, not in addition to providing cognitive development and physical development, social, emotional, that there's that area of creative in all centers. Why? Because if you provide creative opportunities for children to create or to develop their creativity, you're allowing them to develop their analyzing skills, their planning skills, their organizing skills, and so much more that obviously will impact their development further in so many areas. The National Coalition for Core Art Standards recommended that children in early childhood education programs have daily opportunities for creative expression and aesthetic expression, and that they explore and enjoy various forms of dramatic play, music, and dance and visual arts. Isn't that cool? And I think most centers do a very good job at that. And if we look at Eckers has a specific or very specific requirements when it comes to the art area, if you guys remember. So, art and the creative development of children is super important. Stages of children's drawing. Most of us have seen this before, especially in EAR 20. I just wanted to go through it really quickly. But the first stage of children's drawing is mark making. This first stage is just random. The children just random lines for pleasure and exploration. Involving visual and physical movement. They're just exploring. Okay. When we move on to stage two, this is when the children becomes more controlled with the development of small muscles, hand-eye coordination, and cognitive abilities. They are able to hold a pencil. They are able to, make back and forth lines instead of just random marks. They have a purpose for setting the lines whichever way it is that they're setting it. And then the third stage, sorry, pre-schematic stage. This is when they're kind of like developing their own style and understanding that if I want to make a circle, I know how to make a circle each time. So it almost most of their drawings and their art begins to have a very distinct individual. Every child is has their own taste and their own planning and organization skills. So if you go through your children's work, you can pretty much tell who drew it because they will usually always draw things, even if it's different things, with the very specific, distinct marks that they have chosen to use all the time, the marks that they have. It's kind of like when children write their name or when we write our name or signatures, we all have a very unique signature, very different from one another. And if we were, we can tell whose name it is or who wrote this because we learn to recognize and identify all of the marks specific to that child. And then the fourth stage is the schematic stage. This is, more advanced. This is when the child now has a well-developed schema repeated in all drawings to represent humans, home, trees, clouds. They really already know that all humans have a face or a head and two arms and two legs. So they have moved on from the tadpole man when you have that big circle with two hands sticking out of the head. At the fourth stage, they know that the head, that the arms go more in the torso and so forth. So usually this is older preschoolers, very young kindergartners. We're talking about scribblings and even the pre-schematic stage, very early preschool or 3-year-olds. And then the fourth stage is usually older preschoolers like 4 and 5. So this is just another visual of early stages of drawing, which would be kind of like let's see, what stage would this be? This would be the second stage, which is the scribbling stage. They actually begin to put things together, very um, simple lines, but they have begun to be able to combine those simple lines to make things. Children drawings. I love children's drawings. My husband is such an artist, and I am happy to report that both of my kids are artists too. um, I have learned to say, I used to always say, I'm not creative at all. I'm not, but now I have learned that I am creative. Obviously, I'm not creative when it comes to drawing, but I am creative in other things. Like I enjoy writing. I enjoy writing stories and writing songs and poems. But I'm just not good with and I love coloring and painting, but I just cannot draw. So there's different when it comes to observing children's drawing. There's a lot of ways that we can approach that because it gives us a lot of information about all stages of their development. So it is very important to talk to them, to talk to the kids about their creative work, their art, and there's ways to talk to them. And the first one is complimentary. So most of us will say or have learned to say, I love it. That's so awesome. That's so cute. But we're really not valuing the work that they have done. So instead of just very simply saying, I love it, that's so cool, it's almost like it's just natural, it just comes out and we don't really think about it. It's kind of like when you go to, or you have a birthday party or you have, a reason for someone to give you a gift, and they go into the store and they buy it, they take the time to pick out your gift because they know what you like, because they know what you need, whatever it may be. And you're like, and when you get it, it could be the smallest thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, you took the time, I really appreciate it. You really are showing me that you know me, that you care for me. And when you get a gift card, it's just like, oh, thanks so much. Okay, great, thanks. So the person that gave you the gift card is like, oh, hey, here you go. Here's a gift card. It's your birthday, but they really didn't take the time to pick out what you really would like, right? So instead of just saying, I love it, oh my gosh, that's so great, try something like, you worked really long on that. Look how much color you used. Wow, that's very bright, or whatever it is, valuing again, instead of saying, oh, that's awesome, that's so great, oh my gosh, um uh, I, I love it. Instead, you want to say something like, what do you like about it? Tell me. You don't want them to feel that you're putting a value on their work. You want them to place a value on their work themselves. Questioning, what would you like to tell me about it, instead of just drilling the kids. Now, I've mentioned that it's a great opportunity for us to ask open-ended questions, but we can still ask open-ended questions without having to say something like, what is this supposed to be? What is this? Can you tell me about it? It's easier, it's better if we say, what would you like to tell me about it? Because sometimes they don't want to tell you anything about it. If they're just exploring, they don't even know what they did. So we're kind of putting them on the spot. So if you want to ask, and if you see that they're interested in answering your question, say, what would you like to tell me about it? Were you thinking of something special when you did that? Because if you don't, and you start asking just a lot, just drilling the kids with lots of open-ended questions, and kind of like, what is this? How did you do that? When did you do that? Why did you decide to do this? It becomes probing, which is asking too much, and we can become bothersome to those kids, right? So instead of doing that, wait for the child to share. Does he, most of the time they'll call you over there, go over to you, look, teacher, look what I made. If a child comes over to you and says, oh, look, teacher, look what I made. Wow, tell me about it. What did you do? Oh my goodness, You want to stay away from being judgmental. We already know what judgmental is. You want to stay away from correcting. If they colored outside of the lines, if they gave a cat 3 ears, don't say cats don't have 3 ears. Well, their cat does. Do not be judgmental. Do not correct their art. Let them be. And then, of course, psychoanalyzing. As I mentioned earlier, we know that there's art therapists and there's doctors and counselors that rely heavily on what children draw and how they draw and what colors they use. But guess what? We're not them. We are their teachers. We are there to facilitate their learning. We are there to provide them opportunities to look at or to work with art. Instead of being judgmental, correcting, or trying to psychoanalyze their work, try describing. I see that you drew I see that you have a lot of red on your picture. I see that you have a lot of green. Can you tell me about it? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? Of course, you don't want to drill. If you see the child wanting to share with you, ask open-ended questions when appropriate. If the child does not want to share, move on. And of course, wait for the child to not to incite you, wait for the child to invite you. If the child wants to share with you, the child will invite you. What about modeling? Do we show kids models? If you have been in this field, you know that we don't. Now, what do you think about step-by-step drawings? I love to do step-by-step drawings. Not only does it give me a chance to observe how children are able to follow instructions, and also to see how the attention span that children have. I make it very clear that they can all look different. Try your best. I'm only looking at how you follow instructions, but I usually only work step by step drawing with step-by-step drawings with older preschoolers or kids who are 5. When I have a chance to go into the kindergartner classrooms, I like to do that a lot. um, it's just, I think that modeling step by step is really a good thing. But if you are allowing them to create a cat in your classroom, you're not going to show them a model and you're not going to say, this is what a cat looks like. Go and do a cat like this. And if it doesn't look like this, keep trying. No, that's inappropriate. And I think all of us, even for those of us who are not in the field, we know that that's not okay. What about using self portraits? I think self portraits are my favorite things. It shows us how children view themselves. Now, this is a self portrait of my son 2 years or a year ago. And he was really interested in going to karate. So he drew himself in a karate uniform. And the fact that he has a smiley face and he has big arms and big hands and his belt, he knew that kids start off with a white belt, but he didn't want to start off with the white belt. He thought he already knew enough. So he knew that if he started karate, he would start off in a yellow belt. So that tells me a lot. He's very confident. He's confident and he's happy. Now, again, I'm not psychoanalyzing it. And it's just, you're able to see how kids view themselves when you know the child, right? In this case, he's my son, so I can say that. When you have children in your classroom that you've had for months and months and even a year, you can get to know what they think about themselves or how they view themselves with their self-portraits. Learning how to create something from raw materials. Have you ever said, okay, guys, there's some paper, there's some glue, there's some popsicle sticks, some coffee filters, paper plates, and remember we read the story about the very hungry caterpillar. I want you to create the fruit that you or your favorite fruit or the fruit that you think the caterpillar liked the most. And some kids will say like, huh, what? No, I don't know. I can't do it. That's because most of the time they haven't had the opportunity to engage in activities such as that. Your job is to facilitate the learning. Know and take what the children are telling you and try to, okay, well, what do you mean you don't know? Can I help you? What do you think you want to make? Oh, I think I like a strawberry. Well, what color is a strawberry? Red. Wow. So what if you use red to make a strawberry? So even with very simple instructions and very just scaffolding, pretty much, they'll be able to do it. But if they've never had the opportunity, you'll see some kids who will have a difficult time using, creating from raw materials. Exploring materials with their senses. Do you allow children to paint or work with food? I know a lot of people like to do stamping with fruits and vegetables, or like if you read a story or sing a story, a song like the ants go marching one by one, hurrah, right? Maybe bringing them celery, peanut butter, and raisins. That's also art, being creative. Before you tell them what to do, you can just give them the ingredients and see what they come up with. But using their senses, taste, touch, hearing, right? Learning different ways to express thoughts and ideas. Again, telling them you can sing, you can dance, you can use your words, you can jump, you can breathe, you can just giving them different outlets. I love to allow kids to express themselves in more ways than one. It's very important, especially in the society that we're living today. When you allow children to work in creative art, you're allowing them to learn to make decisions. The example that I gave you earlier, the little girl wants pink, but there's only white and red, and they feel comfortable to explore. More than likely, they're going to mix the paint and eventually come up with the color pink. Developing the ability to share materials and appreciate others' work. When they work with their peers and they're saying, wow, that's cool. Wow, look at what you made. You made such a beautiful flower, a beautiful rainbow. Oh, that's awesome. Not only are they learning to or developing social emotional skills, but they're also helping their peers develop social emotional skills and self-esteem. And Being able to share space and material is such a big skill to have in children or people, period. Again, developing a positive self concept when people or their peers applaud the work that they've done, give them compliments. It's such a self esteem booster. It's awesome to see kids developing great self esteem because due to their artwork. Engaging in creative play or creative art also allows children to develop and refine fine motor and cognitive abilities. The more they practice lines or line making or drawing, the more precise they will become with time. Again, I've mentioned this, art is not just drawing, it's music and movement development, dancing and singing, and play in engaging in plays or puppets. I love to give kids puppets to express themselves and retell stories and sing songs and speak to their peers and express their feelings. There's so many great things that you can use puppets for. Sensory experiences, not only working with paint, but clay, Play-Doh, different types of paint, maybe putting some food coloring in glue or food coloring and shaving cream. The kids love all that stuff, and it helps them develop so many skills, and it just gives them those sensory skills or the ability to just explore, right? Especially when we have kids who have a difficult time engaging in such things, or kids that we might suspect or see some red flags that have issues with sensory integration. This is art is such a great activity for them to engage in. It's just free of judgment, right? It's just an opportunity for them to be themselves. Also, blocks as a creative medium. Some kids are they create some very amazing things, right? Well, here's a castle, here's an ocean, here's a princess, whatever it may be, but they love blocks. I love blocks. I still play with blocks with my kids, and their stages, just like art, just like drawing and writing, their stages in block play too. The first stage is carrying, filling, and dumping. Beginning block building, bridging, enclosures, patterns, and then naming structures. This is when they're like, wow, this is my castle, this is my boat. And then the last one, which is reproducing true life structures. My son is learning about the US symbols, national symbols, and he is working on building the Statue of Liberty out of Jenga blocks. So let's see how that works. Here's my son. Of course, I have to throw him in there. Using technology creatively, whether we like it or not, guys, especially now with the COVID-19, look where we are. We're taking this class online because we can't be on face to face, right? Computers, smartphones, DVD and CD players, digital cameras, all kinds of handheld devices. Technology is the way of the future. It just is. Education will never be the same after this. If some schools or programs were reluctant about including technology in their classrooms, I think it has officially changed. Here is my son in his little studio, a little corner of my room, of my little office that I have at home. But you can see all the drawings that he has on his wall and collages and his sister's S's. Her name's Selena. And you can see him using his phone to do step-by-step drawings, and he enjoys making videos, and he likes to draw things. And so that's just a true example of how technology is really affecting everything, all aspects of development, including creative development or creativity. Helping all children with creativity, again, giftedness, creative and cognitive development beyond expected levels. What if you have a child who, like for example, my son, the reason why I have his pictures on here is because look at him. He understands, or he knows how to make a piñata, which I have never showed him. I don't know if he Googled it. Again, technology, right? But he made it. He used his glue and water and the balloon and placed all the paper on it until it hardened. And then he took his oil colors and he's making his piñata into a mask. I thought he was making a piñata, but he was actually just um, doing that to end up making a mask. What do you do with a child who demonstrates abilities and development beyond expected levels? You encourage it and you keep going and you provide more. You take the interest of the child and you help them further develop. So, what do I do with my kid? I let him do whatever it is that he needs to do. Here's a picture of him working on something at his grandma's house. I'm not sure. It looks like a piñata. I think it was one of the many masks that he's done. Cultural diversity. The reason why I chose this is because it shows his culture. We're Mexican, and he understands what a piñata is and the process of making a piñata, but he knew that he could take that same process to and use it to make a mask. And again, what if a child has a disability and maybe doesn't have complete movement of his hands or his fingers or his body? How do you modify? How do you adapt? All children need the opportunity and deserve the opportunity to develop their creative skills. Something very important to think about, right? If everyone in your classroom needs the opportunity to engage in creative play, are you doing enough, or are you making sure that every child can engage free of restriction, which is equity? So you are a great teacher and you provide lots of opportunities for your children to engage in creative play, including developing their creativity in the art center, right? So what do you do? Do you send everything home? Do you put things up on your walls? Do you keep some for as work samples, as observations? All of the above. Work samples, keeping work that kids have done or projects that kids have completed in your classroom, is important to keep pictures of them or the actual project itself. For example, here I have the letter S that my daughter created. Now, she completed this when she was about 2 years old. So I know that a lot of people will say, oh, that's a model. You created the letter S. Yes, it is, but she was too. So again, I think that if it's done with reason and not all the time, it provides them the opportunity to really see what it gives them the opportunity to plan for things that will always be the same. For example, the letter S will always be the letter S, right? If children decide to later on write it in a different way or the way they decide to write it, then obviously that's individual. But the S is the S. It's a universal symbol. Now, as you can see here, I didn't correct the letters that she made. She created, her brother wrote her name, Selena, on the bottom, but even he added a second A. I didn't correct that. I didn't exit out. I didn't white out. I didn't, but providing or keeping this work sample, it allows me as a teacher or a mother to see like, wow, look, she was able to follow the line on the S's, and she was able to create or write her own S and the letter A. And I didn't even show or have a model of the letter A. She was just able from memory to understand that her name includes an S and an A. Work samples are, again, it's a method that preserves the child's work as documentation of development. It's art materials, whatever pictures, whatever it is that the child has completed. You keep them in your portfolios, you keep them up on the wall, you keep them to share with parent teacher conferences for your DRDP. So many things. I love work samples. And of course, work samples help or can be part of an assessment plan. If at the beginning of the year you notice that children don't know how to hold a pencil, but then towards the middle of the year you see that, wow, look, Selena's making the letter S. That I gotta check out her form when she holds a pencil. Is she improving? Has she figured it out? Is it working? Whatever activities or curriculums I'm providing, is it working? So it can obviously be part of an assessment plan. And when I mean assessment plan, it doesn't necessarily be something standardized, not something that you purchased as an assessment, something that you have created in your own classroom for the use of you with your children. More on using work samples. Again, work samples amplify developmental checklists. So again, the DRDP, you want to provide evidence, right? Work samples are evidence. And here she is again, Selena with her dog. Obviously, this is not when she was 2 or 3, or yeah, she was 3 in this when she created this. And this is a picture of her with her dog. Look at her dog. I can't draw that. um, our work samples mirrors and augments other recording methods. Again, the DRDP, right? It's just more evidence. You have more concrete, tangible evidence to help back up your red flags or your wow, this child is gifted, this child is above levels. You want to share this with families, you want to share this with specialists. It's just something that solidifies your opinions and your assessment of the children in your classroom. You can also use them to record conversations that you had with the child. Use them as language and literacy development examples. And of course, you can use a lot of different materials. You don't have to just use markers and paper. For example, this picture, I gave her pencils, markers, crayons, and she drew herself and she drew her dog Blaze, and she decided to cut it out. So not only is she demonstrating the ability to hold her pencil enough, to make the lines and coordinate and plan that the way she wants to look and what her dog, she's differentiating between the dog and her and the sizes, but she's also using her fine motor skills to cut around, which is such great developmental skills and all things that can solidify the levels that I have marked her at. Development revealed in work samples, everything: self-help, physical development, attention span, cause and effect, cognitive development, symbolized thought, everything: stress release, emotional state, art, or all aspects of development are revealed in work samples when children paint and engage in art, and again, not just art, but anything that they do, creative play. All aspects of development are revealed. You can use, as we learned last week, you're working with the specialist, you need to provide evidence, you need to provide data. Work samples are that. You want to use work samples to collaborate with colleagues about the significance of work samples. Again, how do you find the time? You, you know, when you're a teacher, you're going to find the time. As soon as the child is done, I have taught my kids from the very beginning of the class. I tell them, whatever you want to post up on the wall, whatever you want me to staple, you let me know, and we're going to find a spot in the classroom for you to hang it up. Remember, Eckers wants to see create children's work all over the classroom at their eye level. So my kids know where they can get the tape, and where they know that they have the opportunity to tape up their work wherever they like. If they want it up in a higher place, or if it needs to be placed with staples, then they know that they need to get me or my assistant. But this is again Eckers, and it's just their self-esteem is so we help them boost that self-esteem so much when we make them feel so special, and we hang up their work and we share with their families and we share with their peers. It's awesome. What do you do with it? Again, depending on the medium, it can be duplicated for your child's portfolio. Like I said, you can make a copy of it, or you can take a picture of it. You can use it to share with the child and family as a point of discussion in comparison to work over time. So if at the beginning of the year your child was scribbling, then comes December for parent-teacher conferences, your child is writing his name, and then you come to April and there's the end of the year parent-teacher conference, and you can show parents their growth through their work samples. It's such a powerful statement. And of course, it can be displayed in the classroom without competition. Again, everyone's special, and you have to emphasize that in your classroom. And it can be used to explore children's interest and extend with planned activities. Lastly, advantages. In a natural classroom setting, with the child selecting materials and working at her pace and direction, illustrating many areas of development, work samples are awesome for all that. Over a period of time, showing progress of development, which is what we've been talking about, as an expression of the child's thoughts and feelings more accurately and powerfully than an observer can describe them. These are all the advantages of why we should keep or use work samples as part of our assessments or data gatherings. Disadvantages when it comes to work samples, well, make the child overly conscious of manipulation or practice. Again, it all depends on the environment and the tone that you set in your classroom. There are some teachers that include art because it needs to be included in their class, but I would say that I think at least 90% of the teachers in early childhood really truly like art and understand the importance of it. So it can happen, but I don't see that it happens too much. Lead the observer to draw erroneous conclusions from the work. Again, we are teachers. We are there to facilitate their learning and to provide opportunities. We are not art therapists or counselors and all that stuff to, oh my gosh, look, this child uses so much red, but what if there's that's their favorite color, or their house is surrounded with red roses because grandma loves roses and she's planted roses all over her house, and she's just emphasizing how much she loves that. We don't know. We're not analysts. So that could be a little, allow some observers to draw erroneous conclusions. Also reflects the inferences of the selector, as the teacher may only gather scribbling or experimental pieces when actually the child does much more advanced work. Um, Again, this can be something that can easily happen, but if you get to know the child well and you do a good job at communicating with your staff in your classroom, you learn to select material that shows or demonstrates growth. You're not going to select scribbles at the beginning of the year and also scribbles in the middle of the year and also scribbles at the end of the year when you know the child can do much more than that. Now, if you have a child who can only do that and the child's been in your class for a long period of time, then obviously that's a red flag. And of course, you want to gather that to further improve or further develop their skills or conduct a referral. Overall, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages.